Being recorded. Hello, good morning, everyone. It is June 21st at 9:30, and we are going to go ahead and get started into our little training today. So one thing I have been noticing lately, and what has been on everybody's mind, especially just in our market and how things have kind of been running, is the appraisals, right? So appraisals have been a big issue in um, a lot of these transactions right now. So everybody's worried that we're going to over ask and we're going to overbid, and the seller's not going to want to take the appraisal, or the appraisal is going to come in low, and that's been a really big thing. So lately we've been trying to hopefully fight appraisals and try and see if we can get any boost in valuations. But unfortunately our market is kind of in a push right now, and the market demand is kind of outticking the appraisers justifications for being able to appraise these houses for a little higher. So what I want to do is I really want to have our agents understand how to read an appraisal better, because if we can understand how to read an appraisal better, we can then guide and advise our clients even more so, right? So if we're looking at an appraisal and we see that there's some discrepancies, or we see that there's maybe a miss in value somewhere, then we can go back to that appraiser and say, hey, Mr. Appraiser, why didn't you take this into consideration? What's going on here? Can we maybe do a reappraisal, in the sense that not fully get it reappraised, but just take a look at the appraisal again, maybe look at a different comp and see if there's any way we can maybe increase that value. So that's been a big thing lately, and I know it's been just a big issue all around for our sellers and our buyers, just making sure that they're getting taken care of, and we're offering correct valuations for these offers, and we're not just throwing them out of nowhere, and then we get to the closing table or to the appraisal, and then we're 20K below asking. We've gone 3 to 4 weeks into this process. We've already spent almost $1,000 on inspections and to pay for the appraisal, and then at the end of the day, for our seller to be like, you know what, I'm not going to sell, we're backing out, I know I can get X amount of dollars if I just wait a little longer. And we just don't want to put our clients in those positions, right? We want to make sure that if we do have an appraisal miss, we've negotiated that upfront, and we are protecting our buyers. And so for that, if you, as a seller, I would hopefully be trying to accept offers that are not contingent on appraisals. Obviously, more than likely, they're still going to get an appraisal done, but I don't want it to be contingent, meaning that we should hopefully be trying to get waivers of appraisal language, or the waiver of the third party financing addendum, to say that if the property comes in lower than the contracted value, then the buyer has to then bring the cash to the table, right? So if we have a $200,000 sales price and the appraisal comes in at 190,000, that means that the buyer is going to pay the $10,000 difference to make sure our seller still gets that 200,000. So really looking into waiving those appraisal contingencies. We're getting a lot of those lately. I've been submitting offers with those, and thankfully they've been going well. Not everybody has the cash to be able to do that, but if your buyer has it, or if your seller um, wants it, let's try and fight for it, right? Because the appraisals are all over the place. People are bidding these houses $20,000, $30,000 above asking prices, hopefully trying to then get the appraisal to knock it back down for their buyers. But as the market's moving, as the demand is going up, I don't see us having a problem selling the houses for what we want and what our sellers want, but within reason, right? If we know we're in a house that's $190,000 and we're pricing it at 250, then I mean that's kind of just being ridiculous, right? Within reason, let's try and get the best price we can for our clients. And one way to do that is with the waiver of appraisal contingency. So before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can go ahead and look at this contract. Let's just do, yeah, or not the contract. We're going to look at the appraisal. So this is what a typical appraisal looks like, right? It's just a bunch of random numbers. We don't even know how to read it. It's just, what am I looking at, right? And so the main thing is the first first question is, okay, well, where's the value? Where do I look? I see a lot of numbers. I see a lot of mumbo jumbo. Where do I go to find my actual valuation, right? So before we even get there, we need to understand what we're looking at and how to read these things. So first and foremost, if you haven't noticed on the side here, it has the bullet points, right? So subject, right? So this is our subject property. It's 8943 Victoria Lake, the borrower's name, making sure that the appraisal we get matches the address as well as the buyer, because sometimes, I mean, lenders get mixed up, appraisers get mixed up. We always want to make sure that we are, look, that's our client that we purchased it for, or that they purchased it. And this is the property that we are hopefully buying, right? Or selling, depending if you're on the buyer or selling side. And if you are on the selling side, here's the seller's name, right? So we can double check that on both sides. And then also making sure everything else is correct, right? So taxes, zip code's good. The tax year is 2021. There's HOA fees. There's the tenant fee simple type of rights that are owned. So this is the right fee simple rights. If it was something else, then leasehold, estate, or other, and then they would describe it. Assignment type, this is a purchase transaction. It's not a refinance. It's not anything else. The mortgage lender, that who ordered it and who this is going to, their address, and then a little bit more about the property, right? Is this subject currently offered for sale? It is on sale, and it is um, offered for sale for 12 months with the effective appraisal date. Secondly, it kind of goes into some more details. So for this one, it's been on 13 days on market, basically stating that it's on the MLS, and it revealed the pending listing subject to properties we listed on 5/20 and is currently listed for 2/29, 13 days on market. And when they did their appraisal, it was 06/02, right? So basically just saying that in 13 days, we're already contracted, listed at this, and going from there. Contract content, it will then go over what's in the contract, right? It's an arm's length transaction pending at 235. That's 141 a square foot. And the contracted sales price, contracted date, is the owner of public record? Yes, it is. It's on BCAT. And then this is also a very interesting point that a lot of our agents need to understand, you guys, is that concessions do play a part in the appraisal, right? So let's say we're giving back 5,000, we're giving it back 4,000, whatever the case may be, concessions play a impact on appraisals because they tend to inflate them unrealistically, right? So let me read you this comment here. So $3,500. The contract reflects $3,500 paid on behalf of the buyer from the seller. This amount represents 1.49% of the sales price, and the range of concessions seen in some new home transactions within that market are up to the 3%. So concessions paid on behalf of the buyer do not exceed this range, and it is in the opinion of the appraiser that this assistance on behalf of the buyer is typical for the area and can artificially inflate the sales price, right? So when we look at these things and we're pricing houses in the area and getting that true CMA, we need to look at those concessions, right? Because if every single house is getting $5,000 back, $2,000 back, then that really dictates that the houses aren't really $5,000 worth more, or they're valued $5,000 more. It's just that most buyers needed that cash, so they increased the value of the loan amount by that amount to get that concession back. And which is very, very typical, right? So, hey, we'll give you your asking price, but we're gonna ask $3,000 back, so we're gonna give you $3,000 on top of that buy price. So therefore, kind of artificially inflating those prices. So when doing CMAs and doing anything of value, making sure that we look at those sellers' concessions so that we can then justify where we're pricing. If we see constantly there's $4,000 or $5,000 in concessions, then we need to make sure we're not increasing it 5 or 10K above that as well, because we see that it's really going back to the buyer's pocket and not really for the home from the lender. So that's how the lender's going to end up justifying that. The neighborhood. So it goes into the neighborhood. What kind of neighborhood? Is a built up neighborhood. 75% of the neighborhood has been completed. It's a suburban area. It's a stable area. Values are increasing. There's a shortage of houses, and the market time is we contracted under 3 months. And then unit of housing, types of housing, present land use. So 85% of them are single family. There's a 2 to 4 unit, or 1% of them. Some multifamily, some commercial, and then 2 others, maybe industrial or something else. And then it goes into his boundaries. So read these a lot. I would really advise on and look at the neighborhood boundaries, because every appraiser is different, right? Some only do the geographical actual neighborhood, whereas this guy, he actually ended up using the he ended up actually using the zip code for the entire area. That's how he got some of his values. So with this one, it kind of goes into considered I-35 West, I-35 North, Pleasanton, Moore Sand Road, 35 and 1604 South. So this is kind of his geographical location. He describes the neighborhood a little bit. It has all these amenities around there, major employers, Valero, Rackspace. It is an older established area receiving good market acceptance in the past. Southwest ISD kind of taking in all those schools. Market conditions, including supporting conclusions. So the appraiser searched MLS provider that serves the area and did the last 12 months, right? So appraisers will not go more than 12 months to look for comps. So if you are doing a CMA, never go back 12 months. I always recommend going 9 months. And if you still can't find anything, then maybe go 12 months, but 9 months for sure, because if for some reason that house is on market and it takes us a month or 2 months to go under contract, we still have those comps for at least 1 more month, instead of them, going 12 months and then we contract it and then that house sold 11 months ago. So within that month, that one's going to fall off and you can no longer use it, right? So making sure we use closer, more recently sold comps than we can. So this appraiser went all the way back to 12 months and he used the zip code for for his search parameters, where the house is at. So therefore, not just grabbing the neighborhood in general, but the entire zip code, which will hopefully give him a better result at the end of the day. So the site, it goes over the type of property. So the area, square foot, that's the lot, the shape of the lot, and then the zoning type, right? So zoning R5, that's perfectly fine. Also goes into zoning description and what that means. So R5 means a minimum of 5,000 square foot lot, which obviously it is because it's 5,005, and then a lot width of 45 feet. Is zoning compliant? Yes, it is. We want to make sure that that's compliant, because that's going to be a big problem later on down the line. And this is where, being a listing agent and a buyer's agent, we need to make sure that these houses are legal, right? If we're buying a duplex, or if we're buying a fourplex, or even a single family house, we need to make sure that the zoning is correct, right? If somebody's selling a duplex and they're zoned on an R5 and it's not regulated for an R5, then lender's probably going to kick that back and say, you know what, we can't do this loan because it's not properly zoned. And we never want to get that far down the line and not know that, right? So we'll go into how to find out the zoning for these properties in another video, and that one I will do probably next week. That is actually a good one, how to find zoning. Okay. And then it goes into if it was grandfathered in or not, if it's legal or illegal for that. And then yes, this one's saying it is legal for the highest and best use and for that type of zoning. So that's good. Highest and best use, that's what an appraiser will typically always look for, is this property being used to the most valuable and highest value that we can for that property. The site, does it have electric, sewer, kind of all the amenities, just goes over everything it has and doesn't have. Subject to the site of interior, the survey was not provided yet, and some other things. So improvements, then it goes into, so the first page really all about our property, right? Improvements, what does it have, what does it doesn't have. It's a single family house, built in 2015, 5 years old, or yeah, effective date. Foundation is concrete slab, heating, cooling, amenities. It has exterior, interior. So it kind of goes over all of the stuff that the appraiser's noting. So in this area, If you see something missing, or you see something that, hey, hey, Mr. Appraiser, like you missed on the interior or the exterior, that we do have, we do have a, what is it, a little casita, or a additional dwelling unit, or we have this carport that you missed, or we have something. So look, you would find that in here. What did he use? What did he see? And how is he comparing the other houses with your house based on what he's put down here, right? So here it talks about appliances, range, oven, disposal, dishwasher. So the main ones that come with the property, if you did put the refrigerator in there in like a non-realty item addendum or on the contract, he most likely would have put the refrigerator as well and saw that it was going to convey. Don't really put too much emphasis on that, and you're not going to get a whole lot of valuation for it, but it does play a little bit of a factor. Hey, what are you getting with this house? That's not necessarily conditional on the house's value, right? So are you giving them an extra $500 on the contract for that fridge, or is it truly based on the value of the home, right? So, and then overall, 6 bedroom or 6 rooms, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 1,600 square feet total. And then it goes over the subject property. So the subject property features tile carpeting. It also features raised ceilings, rounded corners, entertainment niche, faux wood blinds. So in this area, if you see something missing, if you had built-in speakers in the house, if you had an exhaust vent that is pretty desirable, if you have something else that this guy or the appraiser missed, then you can go ahead and be like, hey, well, we have this, I didn't see you add this, when trying to fight those appraisals, right? Secondly, or I guess next on the improvements, is the description of the property. So houses will get anywhere from a C1 to, I believe, a C5 rating. Majority of your pre-existing houses are going to be C3 and C2 and C3. If it's been freshly updated and looks nice, like a nice flip, probably up to a C2. But C1s are really only for new builds. So C1s, new builds will only really get the C1s, and then anything pre-existing that's in like well done shape will get C2s. C3s still need some updating based on the market. C4s and C5s are the houses where you're going to have appraisal issues. You're going to have probably some rotting wood. You're going to have things that just need to be fixed, right? A C5 is probably unlivable, and a C4 is probably just a house that needs quite a bit of work just to bring it up and get it to FHA or VA standards in those areas. And this is going to be also the area where they're going to put any lender required repairs. So typically it's right here. So visual inspection, subject conforms to the neighborhood, functionality, utility, and condition, and typical construction quality for the area. So basically stating that it's in a good area. And here are there any physical deficiencies or adverse conditions that affect livability, soundness, or structural integrity of the property? And here he puts no. Typically, if there's a lender required repair, he would put yes, and then he would state what repairs need to be done, whether it was the water heater that needs to be raised, or it needs a pan, or whatever the case may be, for that lender then to say, okay, we will go ahead and lend on this property after they've fixed these issues. And for any reason, if the seller does not want to fix those issues, then the buyer is allowed to back out and get their earnest money back. Okay, now for the really good stuff. So the second page, and again, you really only need to know the first 3 pages. That's really where all the key information is going to be. Everything else is going to be additional, supplemental, and just, revisionary, but I'll go into some of it as well. But main thing is focus on the first 3 pages. And so second page is the comps, right? So what are we doing? Here's our subject property again. First one, this is our house that we are selling or buying, making sure the conditions, right? C3, they're all C3. But pretty much going down the line, right? So we're contracted at 235. The next house comparable that he has is 190, 222, 237. And then really we would just go down the line and figure out what these have that ours doesn't have and why the prices are becoming different, right? So we're at 235. This one, after adjustments, he's saying 189, 200, and 212. So we kind of need to know why that is, right? What's going on why are these values so much smaller than our 235? Obviously, the market in itself is much more demanding than anything else right now, so that's going to be a big factor. But as the appraisers go in there and figure out the details, that's what's lowering us. So for the first house, it seems pretty comparable. Doesn't seem any large deductions. This one also has a seven. It's one seven or quality of construction, actual age 6 and 7 years. So he really didn't do any adjustments. It's the same type of sale. Date of sale doesn't matter. It was pretty close to the same date. The site. This one is a little bit bigger, but he didn't give it any extra valuation. Um, Actual age, no extra valuation. Our square footages are relatively right about the same. Number of rooms, number of bedrooms and baths about the same. So no valuation there. The only thing that he did give a valuation for is the front porch deck. So apparently there's a deck or a front porch, says large patio, that he gave or took off $1,000 to then reflect on ours. So really, from the 190 that it sold for, he brought it down to 189,000 of what he feels is that price. And then so moving on to the next one, nothing really, same square footage, same rooms, beds, and baths. Only thing he allotted for was this patio, which is $2,400, and then a pool and spa. So this house actually has a pretty nice pool. I would say that pool is at least 85 to $90,000 to put in. But look at the value, guys. I mean, he only gives appraisers will only give about $20,000 for an entire pool. Like, that's pretty nuts to think about. So when telling your sellers, or when your sellers are coming back to you saying, "Well, I mean, that house sold for 200,000. I want to list mine for 300,000 because I have a pool. I spent 85, $90,000 on that pool. So, I need to get my money back." Well, Mr. Seller, realistically, people put in pools because it's a luxury item, and it's because it's an item that they want for their enjoyment, not for an investment, right? You don't buy a pool as an investment. You buy it because you really want a pool and you want to enjoy that lifestyle. Hopefully within time, it'll increase, your home will naturally increase in value and you can maybe recoup that, but you're never going to get the same amount of money that you put into the pool back out for the pool. And this is a prime example for it. He only gave him $19,000, right? So if we're pricing a house, let's not try and shoot for 50, 400,000 or $100,000 more. Now, if the neighborhood justifies it and the neighborhood is showing that, okay, from this house to this house, and this house has a pool, and all the other houses that have pools are X amount more than the ones that don't, then obviously that's a thing in itself. But overall, you're never going to get the same price you're going to get from paying for the pool out of the pool. So that brought them down some as well. Another one, the third one he used, and it also talks about how far it is, right? So this one was 0.33 miles away. This one was 0.2 miles away. And this one was 1.5 miles away, right? So typically we don't see houses being appraised for that far away, but because this appraiser actually only used the zip code, I can see why we have such a far comp. So in my eyes, this appraiser really tried to get us the highest value for the property. Unfortunately, it just, it's just a slower paced market versus it being able to just jump in value that much. So for this last one, arm's length transaction. So this one was a cash offer. So went a little bit less. This one was an FHA offer. And then this one was a conventional offer. So they took off 4K from this one just because the type of financing is a little bit stronger and just more desirable and not the same as these two. So for some reason, he's devaluing it $4,000. The C3 ranking of the quality of build, he also took another $6,000 off. And why, I'm not 100% sure, because C3 is very right. I mean, you have updated C3, then you have not so updated C3. So it's a pretty wide range of property. But for him, he felt like he needed to take off $6,000. Maybe this one had more granite countertops, or it just had a little bit nicer finishes that didn't jump it up to, a fully remodeled home, but it had enough upgrades, maybe some laminate flooring, or just
non-carpets in the bedrooms, just something that elevated it just a little bit more than he had to take off from comparing. This one is 300 square foot larger, so he felt that that was worth 4,000 or $14,000 less. It also has an extra room, whether it be a sitting room, an extra dining room, an extra something, but they still have the same beds and baths. And then bringing our net total adjustments from this one to $24,520, right? So this one, it was a newer house, I believe, um, and brought it value down all the way to 212. So on the second page is really where we're going to find the majority of what we're looking for, and that basically is the price, right? So after it's done, the comparisons between the two, it goes into whether it did or did not research the sale or transfer history of the house. So they're saying they did, and and this is kind of their history of when it went on market, when it went under contract, and kind of where we're at now in the pending status, getting everything valued. The analysis of the sale transfer. So that's just kind of again going through how he has determining more valuation. And then once at the very bottom of the second page, and it's typically always here, is where you're going to find your value, or where it says reconciliation, right? So indicated by value by the sales comparison approach. So with this approach, they valued it at $205,000, right? So I mean that's a $35,000 adjustment in sales price, which is pretty crazy. However, based on the sales in that area, I mean, we knew we were listing over asking. The seller was pretty adamant about it, and unfortunately, the appraisal came back pretty low. However, I do feel that the appraiser did do a good job and really tried to fight for it, because some of those properties were just in much nicer condition than ours. The cost comparison approach. So they'll typically always do two. They said that the house to rebuild it is 197. Unfortunately, I don't agree with that based on the sales of lumber and prices today. Honestly, you can't build them for cheaper than you can buy them right now. So it's pretty crazy. This appraisal is made as is, and then it just goes again into the value. So if you all have trouble finding where to look to find the actual valuation that we got, it's on the bottom of the second page, and that is probably the most important. Besides this one and the bottom of the first page, these are going to be your two main focuses to look at, but it's always good to look at everything, making sure things are right, making sure that they value things properly. If we do have the miss, that's when we really need to learn how to dive into it and understand how to read them. If it meets value, then hey, I mean, nobody we really don't look at it because we met value, we're good, we don't have any contingencies, there's nothing to fix, so we're good to go, right? But when we have those issues, when we have things that we need to fix, when we have a miss in valuation, we need to understand why and how that appraiser's thinking. That okay, well, justify me why you think it's less than what it is. Let me see your notes. Let me see what you took into account. Yeah, but see, I see that you missed, that it has the built-in speakers, that it has a newer roof, that it has a brand new HVAC system, or that it had whatever the features, things that it has that you can't relay or that they didn't relay on here. Let's make them aware of it. Check for any lender required repairs that are going to be here on the bottom of the first page, and then of course the valuation on the bottom of the second page. Third page is typically if they have any more comps. Typically appraisals will only do three, but if they can find more, they will add more on the third page, such as they did this one. 225. The actual age, this one's 14 years old, so they increased the value by $8,000, and the condition is less than ours, so they took off, or actually it would be better than ours, and so they took off $10,000 because apparently it might be newer or just look nicer and have better finishes. This one had a fence slash storage shed, so they took off $1,000 for that, and then total of $3,000 reduction to get 222. Right, so it's just additional. They didn't bring in a fifth or sixth comp. Again, the history behind the subject property, and then that's really majority of it. The scope of work, the second page,
Just again talks about what he did, how he did his job, what he was looking for, the intended user comments, when no history exists, certification, additional item, just basically going into it. And then it also goes into the cost approach. So they were valuing the lot at 50,000, valuing the build at $85 a square foot, and the garage carport at $26 a square foot. So giving us those valuations, took away some depreciation, and then got us to a 197 421. However, but that, I feel like that's with no contract, right? That, I feel like that's just the cost for the lumber, for the materials, for the stuff, but then that's not accounting for all the labor and the cost it's going to actually take to actually build it. At least that's in my opinion. I'll have to, if I ever have a chat with this guy, then I'll have to bring that up, because I mean we all know it's pretty crazy out there building. Is the developer or builder in a controlled homeowners association? This one is not, and it is a detached unit. It's not a multi-row or, you know, townhome kind of thing. And then it's a bunch of disclosures for the appraiser, the appraiser's license number and information. And then it goes into the market conditions for that area. It also gives you some graphs, and some are more in depth, some are less in depth. Just kind of depends on what appraisal company you go for. Data sets, definitions, yeah, see, so Q3, quality ratings from a Q3 to a Q6, updated, not updated, remodeled, just kind of explaining again what it is they're looking at. A database key, so if you ever have, the abbreviations in the appraisal report, this is the little key to figure out what those words mean. Typically, they'll have a sketch of the home as well, kind of just outlining the house, making sure that the square footages are correct. And that's another thing that I wanted to bring up was square footages, because we never want to get into a problem where we think the house is bigger than it is, and we then sell it, and then it's actually, we could have had another $20,000-$30,000 available to us if we had known the appraisal or the square footage was correct. So it's happened multiple times, and it's typically it's less than what the appraisal comes in at. So like, let's say we think the house is 3,000 square feet, but then the appraisal comes in and it turns out it's actually 2,500 square feet. So then price reductions will have to go down, most likely, because the appraisal value will come down because it's not really 3,000 like we priced it at, right? So one thing that I would advise is getting a house checked for the actual square footage before going on market. It doesn't cost you a lot, but it also can save your buyer a lot of money and make them a lot more money, or it can just save time and a conversation that makes you as the agent potentially look bad, right? Well, this and that, we didn't check to see if that, and they were thinking they were going to get, a lot more money for their house than they actually ended up getting. So there is a company that I do like using. I've used them a few times already, and my investors use them as well. Because when we actually bought a house a couple months ago for my investor. We bought it at, the BCAD said it was, I think, 2,500 square feet or 2,200 square feet. We called the guy, had him recheck the square footage. Turns out the house is actually 3,300 square feet. So we then obtained almost 1,000 square feet more that we can now list on the market and get and recapture that money, versus if we had not done that and we still thought we were running on a 2,500 square foot home. We lost 800 to 1,000 square feet. That is, I mean, hundreds of thousands, really. I mean, if you're thinking about it, right? So if you have 1,000 square feet and things are going at $120 a square foot, I mean, think about all that money that you could have had. So the company's called Measure and Draw. I'm gonna type in their contact info right now. The number is 210-454-9720, and their email is jts0119 at gmail.com. And so who he is is he's a retired appraiser. He used to do just, I mean, he was an appraiser, right? So he knows what he's doing. He knows what appraisers are looking for. He understands what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, and how to measure a house, right? Because he does the same as any other appraiser would. And I think it's for houses under 3,000 square feet. I think it's $250, and anything over 3,000 square feet up to I think about 5,500 square feet is 350, and then above that it's going to have to be more of a custom pricing, just because once you start getting into those much larger homes, that's when we're going to have an issue um, with those things. So I'm going to stop sharing so y'all can see my beautiful face. But besides that, guys, that's really it. I would advise all of y'all to really explore and look into the appraisals a lot more. Really, it's just the first 3 pages that are most important. Really, the first 2, but the first 3 is going to be the ones that have the majority of the information that we're looking for. Bottom of the first page always has the lender required repairs, and bottom of the second page always has the valuation of how they came up with it, right? Whether it's the cost approach, or we're doing the income approach, or we're doing the cost approach, market approach, or income approach. An income approach typically will be done for rental properties, investments, multifamily stuff, and they'll do cost approach depending on if they're making a lot of money, right? So really look into how they're valuing these things and making sure that they are coherent with the transaction itself. Other than that, next week I will be doing how to find zoning, as well as talking about T47s. I know that was another topic that one of our agents wanted to discuss a little further, was the T47 and how it works and what's going on with it. What is it? Why do we do it? So we'll go into that next time. Other than that, I wish y'all a great rest of your day. And if you're watching this at home, I hope you have a great day as well. Bye-bye.